I'm Justin Mott and welcome to my home in Hanoi, Vietnam, and today I'm going to talk about why you should revisit your archive, why you should open up those old hard drives that are all dusty and look at images that you shot a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, why you should do this frequently. I'll tell you about my experience going through a story I shot a year ago, and I'll use that as an example about why you should revisit your archive. So why? Well, stay tuned to find out. All right, well, first of all, just revisiting your old images in general for any genre of photography that you're in will make you a better photographer. Why? Because it'll make you a better self-editor. It'll teach you about where you were as a photographer, where you currently are as a photographer compared to where you were, and hopefully it'll teach you about where you want to be as a photographer. So that's it for this vlog. You don't have to watch anymore. I'm gonna go into more detail. So before I get into why I want you to dig up thousands of old photographs and go through your old work and spend hours editing again, something you wanted to put behind you, trying a new segment out to make this a little more personal. You guys have been great as a community. You ask great questions. The comments have been wonderful. Some of you reach out in the comment section here, which I love. Some of you reach out in the comment section on Instagram or private message me. Love that. So it's a great dialogue. I wanted to share some news, create a little more personal feeling here. Big news for me is I had one of my images chosen for a global campaign by Leica cameras. One of the images that I took of the northern white rhinos and one of the caretakers was chosen for this campaign. It's a global campaign that's gonna run print, so nice giant prints all around the world. And it's part of a television commercial that's gonna run around the world as well. It's a great commercial, fantastic commercial. I posted it on my YouTube channel as well, so you can see the commercial there. I'll put a link in the description, but check out the commercial, really powerful commercial. Awesome photographers in there. I'm very, very excited and very honored and humbled to be part of that. And more importantly, the image that was chosen, so meaningful to me. The image of Zachariah and Najin being in this campaign, raising awareness for the plight of the northern white rhino, something that means a lot to me, as you guys who followed me for a while know. Exciting news. So anyway, that's my news for now. I'm gonna put a little quick news in each one if I have some news. So that's my news there. So let's get into it. So what sparked this? What sparked going through all these old images? Well, it's something I make a habit of anyways. I tend to go through my old images when I have free time, when I have a slow week. But what specifically sparked this vlog? Recently, I had a request from someone, an art buyer, someone that was interested in buying prints of my work, if they could see some of my images from my Northern White Rhino series in black and white. Now, I'd shot the series in color. They were all part of my personal project, Kindred Guardian, which is all shot in color. Doesn't mean I can't convert them to black and white, but I didn't shoot these with black and white in mind. So when I did my edit, I didn't edit with black and white in mind. First reaction might be to just take your first selects and say, okay, I'm just gonna take my first selects, put the slider to desaturate and show them. But no, I wanted to see the whole take again with a fresh set of eyes, with black and white in mind, because I'm gonna look at things completely different. And I'll go into that in a different vlog of what I'm looking for in black and white compared to color. But I wanted to look at this fresh. So I took thousands of images because I was there about a year ago and I spent about 7 days, the lead up to the surgery for the northern white rhinos and then the surgery itself. I was one of only 2 international photographers that were invited there, and I had shot the story originally for my personal project, but it was later published in the Washington Post as a news story, so the edit was done sort of in a news way with a news publication in mind. And then I also had an edit done for my personal project, but I had never had an edit done for selling prints. So I wanted to look at it freshly, so I took all my raws, which is thousands of images, I went through them as a personal exercise. I wanted to also sequence a new story in black and white, to show the story in black and white and just have a different set of eyes on this. A year later, a year has passed. I revisit my pictures in general. It's a habit, it's something I like to do, it's a good exercise. So I'm gonna go through reasons why you should revisit your old pictures, a very important exercise, something you should do during your downtime, and I'll show you the different take. I'll show you the original take that was published for the series in the Washington Post, and I'll show you the take now done in black and white, and you can see the difference, and it's fun to see. It's a fun exercise to see. Not always the second time is the best, but sometimes it is. But in this case, it actually worked out quite well, as I hope you'll agree. You'll see later. So the first reason to go back through your images is that we're always changing as photographers, and hopefully we're always evolving as photographers. Hopefully we're growing and getting better as photographers. So while we're evolving, sometimes we're evolving at different paces, meaning like sometimes we grow as an editor, but not as much as a photographer. So let's say, for example, a couple years ago, like, you're very solid in your photography and you're at like this level here, but as a self-editor, you're only here. But if you've grown in that time to become a better editor of your own work, if you have a better eye for sequencing your stories or picking out single images that are powerful that you might have not have seen before, this is the time you'll find those images. You go back and shoot, because honestly, sometimes I've had that happen. Like I had growth as a photographer, but I didn't have growth as a self-editor, so I didn't see those pictures yet. I was ready to take those pictures, but I wasn't ready or confident enough to put them in an edit. So that's the first reason, is you might see things completely differently. And in addition to you changing as a self-editor and changing as a photographer and your growth in those things, you also might have changed your career. You might have changed your pivot. It doesn't mean you've changed completely, gone from just wedding photography to just product photography, but sometimes within your career, you've changed your focus. So for me, early on in my career, I did a lot of assignments. I've done over 100 assignments for the New York Times. A lot of my portfolio was based on getting that kind of work. So it was a mix of feature stories, news stories, portraits and travel stuff. And that was very heavy in my portfolio. But a couple of years ago, when I did less assignment work, a little bit more longer form magazine stories and more longer form personal projects, and mainly pivoting my work towards wildlife photojournalism and stories like that, that's going to change the look of my portfolio. So I might have shot some stories years ago, which I have, stories that related to conservation, stories that related to animal welfare, that maybe didn't fit the kind of work I wanted to get then, so they didn't end up in my portfolio. I wanted to have this well-rounded portfolio with like a little bit of everything. But now, later on in my career, I'm more focused on this type of work, so I want my portfolio to reflect that. So going back through my old images and finding images that reflect who I am now as a photographer, that's important, and that's been very beneficial to me. So even though these images I took years ago, they end up in my portfolio now to reflect the kind of work I want to get now. The second reason you should look at your old work is the context of it. So for example, my situation now. I shot this image with my personal project in mind. The story was edited and published with a newspaper in mind, the Washington Post, and now a year later, someone wants to buy the images for a print. So things are going to change, right? And looking back to that work, maybe an image that's more people heavy might not be as sellable. Maybe if someone, or even specifically, if someone wanted, okay, no person in the shot, they wanted just the rhino, or they wanted both, doesn't matter, but it's a different context. So I'm looking back to the images now with a different purpose in mind, right? So, or maybe you wanted to start a gallery on your website to sell more landscape stuff, and you were doing assignment photography, and in that assignment photography, your landscape shots didn't quite make the cut because your editor liked more people shots and you were more people focused. Or just something as simple as you didn't have it shot in black and white at the time, you weren't thinking about it in black and white, but now you've set up a black and white gallery like I'm doing, or you're selling prints in black and white, or you wanted to mix in some more black and white in your photos, or you're just starting to shoot like specifically in black and white. The context might have changed, so just that alone, different context is a great reason to go back and look through your old images. Third reason, just something simple, is going back through your old images, whether, even if you didn't have context change, even if nothing changed, no reason to look back through your old stuff related to what's happening now in your life, solely just to look through your old images as an exercise to help you become a self-editor is important. That's enough to go back through your old images. Like I said before, sometimes we evolve faster and we grow faster as a photographer than we do as a self-editor. I know a lot of photographers, myself included, that are horrible self-editors. It's another reason why I always recommend, if you're doing a deep story, even something simple, even an assignment, have a second set of eyes on it, someone that you trust, someone with a different opinion, someone with a different view on things. Have them look at your work as well. But growing as a self-editor, practicing as a self-editor is so important. It's like growing as a photographer is great, but if you don't see those images, or if you saw them when you took them, but don't see them in the edit, they don't do you any good. They just sit there buried in your archive. So going back and looking through your old images with a sequence in mind, with singles in mind, however you're looking at it, just going back and seeing things differently as an editor is very important. Because most of the time we are editing our own work, let's be honest. Even when we're on assignment, we're not sending the editor most of the time our whole entire take. We're sending them just an edit of the take. So you might have missed some things. That exercise, that practice of editing your own work, different stages in your life, different times, but just the exercise of doing it helps you become a better self-editor, which helps you become a better photographer. The next reason to go back and look at your work is timing. Now, timing is important. I've had stretches in my career. I've been shooting back-to-back-to-back stories. There was a time where I was doing New York Times stories for the foreign desk, for the travel section, for the business desk. I mean, you name it. It was just back-to-back-to-back. Doing a story for a day or two, filing on deadline, flying to the next location, doing that story, filing. I think I gave the editor my best shot. But going back to that work, back to that assignment work, when you've actually had time, it's the same with a wedding, right? If you shot a wedding, you're on a deadline, you had a bunch of weddings at the same time, you might have missed some things. You might have missed it so you could find and deliver that to the client and you read it. Or for my sake, for the new stuff is, of course, you probably gave your best photographs. In addition to seeing things differently, you might have actually missed some things because you were rushed, because you were on a deadline, because you were under stress. So going back through your images when you've got time, again, during your downtime. Also, you might see the story a little bit differently later on. You might think, oh, that was actually made sense. That one picture said all these things I want to say about the story and I missed it at the time. Or you didn't think that photograph was good because that's not what the editor chose at the time. So now going back through when you've had time to think, you've had time to relax, you're not under stress, you might find some nice little hidden gems in there. So the next reason to go back through your archive is new opportunities, new markets. What do I mean by that? What I mean is things change, right? Early on in my career, I never really thought about selling print. It's not something that I did. I wasn't represented by a gallery, which I am now. So I didn't really think of that. I wasn't selling limited edition prints. I wasn't selling any print. So going back through old work with this in mind has been really helpful to me because at the time, all this work that I shot was all assignment work. It was all in deadline. It was all with a newspaper in mind. Most of it was New York Times assignments. I didn't think of that work as being sold as prints, but now later on in my career, I'm looking looking at that work and saying, oh, okay, this might work as limited edition prints. This might be the kind of images I would sell to my gallery, or that work might work as a collection of images. Let's just say, for example, I wanted to do like a whole new series to pitch around to magazines about the changing face of Vietnam or the economy of Vietnam or something like that. Now, I might not have had it from one story at the time, but if I look at my work with that in mind, a collection of my work, then I could go through all these old stories and piece together a new collection that might work as something I could sell to a magazine now or newspaper, or it might even work as a section of my portfolio as a new story or as a new collection of images. So things change. So going back, you might see new opportunities of looking at your old work. You might have the idea ahead of time, or just going back through your old work might spark a new idea for you. And the last reason, and probably the most important reason, is going back through your old images. It's a perfect self-evaluation because you'll see how you used to shoot. You'll see how you shoot now. You'll see how you've grown. Or if you haven't grown, that's a red flag there. So you see that maybe you've become a little stale. During that evaluation, seeing where you were and seeing where you are now will also teach about where you want to be next on so many different levels. How you've changed stylistically as a photographer, what you focused on before, what you focus on now, how hard you work, how hard you break down an assignment. When you see something interesting, did you used to work a little bit harder? Did you used to really break it down and overshoot it? Are you being a little bit lazy now? Or maybe you're just more efficient now, but being honest with yourself is an important part of self-evaluation. But look at these images, compare something you shot 5 years ago and compare like a similar kind of shoot of something you shot now and see, are you more efficient, or are you not working as hard, or is a little bit of both? All these things are an important way to evaluate yourself. So doing this exercise, honestly, it'll teach you so much about yourself as a photographer. So what I want to do now is show you some pictures. And so there's no confusion. These are all shot from my second trip, shot a year ago. And these are from the northern white rhino's procedure to try to save the species. So this is the lead up to the surgery and then images from the surgery itself. Here's some of the images that the Washington Post published, and you can see the kind of style they're going for. Again, nothing wrong with the images they selected, but different context, right? Different circumstances. They have their audience in mind. They have a news story, an article that's going to go along with these images, an interview that's going to go along with these images, and they have an audience in mind. Yes, they're my images, but the final edit is a collection of what I liked and what an editor liked, and then with a purpose in mind of that particular newspaper and their particular audience. Now here's some images from the same story, now under a different context. Now thinking about the story in black and white, thinking about selling these as individual prints for people to hang on their wall. So completely different thought process. Now I'm not going to show you the full story because it's almost 30 pictures, but you can visit my website, justinmott.com, and in my journal you can see the edit I did in black and white there, the full edit there. But here's a couple of my favorite images. Again, different context, different outlet, different perception. A year later, wasn't on a deadline to edit these images, didn't have the story, didn't have the newspaper in mind. This is my edit. These are what I like, not just what myself and the editor came up with. So everything's quite different. As you can see, all these images are different. These images are the ones that I felt worked now for this context. So you can see, you'll see things differently. You'll grow as a photographer, you change as a photographer, situations change, circumstances change. You've grown as an editor. All these different reasons are, in their own right, reasons to go back through your edit. Now, I'm not saying you have to do this like once a week, but be disciplined about it. Mark it a couple times a year. I would say like 4 times a year would be great. Go back through, spend a day, spend a week. We photographers, we don't like to say we have a slow week, but we have a slow week, let's be honest. So during that time, mark off time. Each quarter of the year, self-evaluation. And the best form of self-evaluation, I think, is going back through your old work. Again, not just through your first selects, not through your final edits. Go back through your whole take. And if you guys do this exercise, which I hope you all will, share those photos with me. If you find like a hidden gem in there, something that you missed, share it with me. I love to see that. It's a fun process to go through and make you a better photographer. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Take it easy.